Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Empty Cloud Monastery. My name is Sāmaṇera Nipako, and this morning we will be going over the topic of gratitude. In particular, there is an article by Ajahn Jeff that I am quite fond of that goes over this topic, so I'll be reading that with you all today. We will start with a short meditation and then we will begin our reading. First, Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghaṃ Namasāmi. Right, so we'll begin our meditation. You can do whatever type of meditation you find suits you best, and we'll be sitting for 10 minutes. Right. Good morning, Brian. Good morning, the LFH. And good morning to Diane. For anybody that is tuning in now or in the future, the article on gratitude by Ajahn Jeff that I'm going to be reading is linked in the description if you would like to read along while I read it out loud. The Lessons on Gratitude. These two people are hard to find in the world. Which two? The one who is first to do a kindness, and the one who is grateful and thankful for a kindness done. Anguttara Nikaya 2.118. In saying that kind and grateful people are rare, the Buddha isn't simply stating a harsh truth about the human race. He's advising you to treasure these people when you find them, and more importantly, showing how you can become a rare person yourself. Kindness and gratitude are virtues you can cultivate, but they have to be cultivated together. Each needs the other to be genuine. A point that becomes obvious when you think about the three things most likely to make gratitude heartfelt. 1. You've actually benefited from another person's actions. 2. You trust the motives behind those actions. 3. You sense that the other person had to go out of his or her way to provide that benefit. Points 1 and 2 are lessons that gratitude teaches kindness. If you want to be genuinely kind, you have to be of actual benefit. Nobody wants to be the recipient of help that isn't really helpful, and you have to provide that benefit in a way that shows respect and empathy for the other person's needs. No one likes to receive a gift given with calculating motives or in an offhand and disdainful way. Points 2 and 3 are lessons that kindness teaches gratitude. Only if you've been kind to another person will you accept the idea that others can be kind to you. At the same time, if you've been kind to another person, you know the effort involved. Kind impulses often have to do battle with unkind impulses in the heart, so it's not always easy to be helpful. Sometimes it involves great sacrifice, a sacrifice possibly only when you trust the recipient to make good use of your help. So when you're on the receiving end of a sacrifice like that, you realize you've incurred a debt, an obligation to repay the other person's trust. This is why the Buddha always discusses gratitude as a response to kindness and doesn't equate it with appreciation in general. It's a special kind of appreciation, inspiring a more demanding response. The difference here is best illustrated by two passages in which the Buddha uses the image of carrying. The first passage concerns appreciation of a general sort. Then the man, having gathered grass, twigs, branches, and leaves, having bound them together to make a raft, would cross over to safety on the far shore in dependence on the raft, making an effort with his hands and feet. Having crossed over to the far shore, he might think, "How useful this raft has been for me, For it was in dependence on this raft that, making an effort with my hands and feet, I have crossed over to safety on the far shore. Why don't I, having hoisted it on my head or carrying it on my back, go wherever I like? What do you think, monks? Would the man, in doing that, be doing what should be done with the raft? No, Lord. And what should the man do in order to be doing what should be done with the raft? There is the case where the man, having crossed over to the far shore, would think, how useful this raft has been for me. For it was in dependence on this raft that, making an effort with my hands and feet, I have crossed over to safety on the far shore. Why don't I, having dragged it on dry land, or sinking it in the water, go wherever I like? In doing this, he would be doing what should be done with the raft. Majjhima Nikaya 22. The second passage concerns gratitude in particular. I tell you, monks, there are two people who are not easy to repay. Which two? Your mother and father. Even if you were to carry your mother on one shoulder and your father on the other shoulder for 100 years, and were to look after them by anointing, massaging, bathing, and rubbing their limbs, and they were to defecate and urinate right there on your shoulders, you would not in that way pay or repay your parents. If you were to establish your mother and father in absolute sovereignty over this great earth, abounding in the seven treasures, you would not in that way pay or repay your parents. Why is that? Mother and father do much for their children. They care for them, they nourish them, they introduce them to this world. But anyone who rouses his unbelieving mother and father, settles and establishes them in conviction, rouses his unvirtuous mother and father, settles and establishes them in virtue, rouses his stingy mother and father, settles and establishes them in generosity, rouses his foolish mother and father, settles and establishes them in discernment. To this extent, one pays or repays one's mother and father. In other words, as the first passage shows, it's perfectly fine to appreciate the benefits you have received from rafts and other conveniences without feeling any need to repay them. You take care of them simply because that enables you to benefit from them more. The same holds true for difficult people and situations that have forced you to develop strength of character. You can appreciate that you've learned persistence from dealing with crabgrass in your lawn, or equanimity from dealing with unreasonable neighbors, without owing the crabgrass or neighbors any debt of gratitude. After all, they didn't kindly go out of their way to help you. And if you were to take them as models, you'd learn all the wrong lessons about kindness, that simply following your natural impulses, or even worse, behaving unreasonably, is the way to be kind. Debts of gratitude apply only to parents, teachers, and other benefactors who have acted with your well-being in mind. They've gone out of their way to help you and have taught you valuable lessons about kindness and empathy in the process. In the case of the raft, you do best to focus gratitude on the person who taught you how to make a raft. In the case of the crabgrass and the neighbors, focus gratitude on the people who taught you how to not be overcome by adversity. If there are benefits you've received from things or situations you can't trace to a conscious ancient in this lifetime, feel gratitude to yourself for the good karma you did in the past that allowed those benefits to appear. And be grateful for the good karma that allows you to receive and benefit from other people's help in the first place. If you had no good to your credit, they wouldn't be able to teach you. As the Buddha's second passage shows, the debt you owe to your benefactors needn't be tit for tat and shouldn't be directed solely to them. Now, the debt you owe your parents for giving birth to you and enabling you to live is immense. In some passages, the Buddha recommends expressing gratitude for their compassion with personal services. Mother and father, compassionate to their family, are called Brahma. First teachers, those worthy of gifts from their children. So the wise should pay them homage, honor, with food and drink, clothing and bedding, anointing and bathing and washing their feet. Performing these services to their parents, the wise are praised right here and after death. Rejoice in heaven. Iti 106. However, in Nikaya 2.32 shows that the only true way to repay your parents is to strengthen them in 4 qualities: conviction, virtue, generosity, and discernment. To do so, of course, you have to develop these qualities in yourself, as well as learning how to employ great tact in being an example to your parents. As it happens, these 4 qualities are also those of an admirable friend, in Nikaya 8.54, which means that in repaying your parents in this way, you become the sort of person who'd be an admirable friend to others as well. You become a person of integrity, who, as the Buddha points out, has learned from gratitude how to be harmless in all your dealings and to give help with an empathetic heart, respectfully, in a timely way, and with the sense that something good will come of it. Majjhima Nikaya 110 and Anguttara Nikaya 5.148. In this way, you repay your parents' goodness many times over by allowing its influence to spread beyond the small circle of the family into the world at large. In doing so, you enlarge the circle of their goodness as well. This principle also applies to your teachers, as the Buddha told his disciples. So, is this what you think of me? The Blessed One, sympathetic, seeking our well-being, teaches the Dhamma out of sympathy. Then you should train yourselves harmoniously, cordially, and without dispute in the qualities I have pointed out. Having known them directly, the 4 frames of reference, the 4 right exertions, the 4 bases of power, the 5 faculties, the 5 strengths, the 7 factors of awakening, the Noble Eightfold Path. Majjhima Nikaya 103. In other words, the way to repay a teacher's compassion and sympathy in teaching you is to apply yourself in learning your lessons well. Only then can you spread the good influence of those lessons to others. As for the debts you owe yourself for your past good karma, the best way to repay them is to use your benefits as opportunities to create further good karma, and not simply enjoy the pleasure they offer. Here again, it's important to remember the hardships that can be involved in acting skillfully, and to honor your past skillful intentions by not allowing them to go to waste in the present. For example, as Ajahn Lee once said, "It's not easy to attain a human mouth, so bow down to your mouth every day." In other words, respect your ability to communicate and use it to say only what's timely, beneficial, and true. These are some of the lessons about kindness and empathy that well-focused gratitude can teach. Lessons that teach you how to deal maturely and responsibly in the give and take of social life. Small wonder then that the Buddha cited gratitude as the quality defining what it means to be civilized. Anguttara Nikaya 2.31. But well-focused gratitude can also teach lessons that apply further to the training of the mind. First are the lessons touching on the nature of human action itself. The sense that you've benefited from another person's action underscores the point that action does give results. The importance you give to the other person's motives in helping you underscores the point that the quality of the action lies in the intention behind it, and the sense that the other person went out of his or her way to help you underscores the sense that action isn't totally determined. You feel indebted to the people who helped you because you sense how easily they might have denied that help, and how difficult your life might have been if that's what they had chosen to do. Your parents, for instance, didn't have to raise you or arrange for someone else to raise you. They could have aborted you or left you to die. So the fact that you're alive to read this means that somebody chose, again and again, to help you when you were helpless. Sensing that element of choice is what creates your sense of debt. All three of these points, the efficacy of action, the importance of intention, and the existence of choice, were distinctive elements in the Buddha's teaching on action. And the emotional resonance that gratitude and empathy give to these points may be the reason why, when the Buddha introduced the basic outline of his teaching, he cited topics connected with these emotions. The value of giving and the debt owed to one's parents, Majjhima Nikaya 117. He couldn't offer his listeners proof for his 3 points. That would only come with their experience of awakening, but by showing how his teaching on action allowed for generosity to be a meaningful action and gratitude a meaningful emotion, he offered his listeners an emotionally satisfying reason for accepting his words. Gratitude also gives practice in developing qualities needed in meditation. As the Buddha noted, the practice of concentration centers on the power of perception. Training in gratitude shows how powerful perception can be, for it requires developing a particular set of perceptions about life and the world. If you perceive help as demeaning, then gratitude itself feels demeaning. But if you perceive help as an expression of trust, the other person wouldn't want to help you unless he or she felt you would use the help well. Then gratitude feels ennobling, an aid to self-esteem. Similarly, if you perceive life as a competition, it's hard to trust the motives of those who help you, and you resent the need to repay their help as a gratuitous burden. If, however, you perceive that goodness in life is the result of cooperation, then the give and take of kindness and gratitude become a much more pleasant exchange. Similarly, gratitude requires mindfulness in the Buddha's original sense of the word as keeping something in mind. In fact, the connection between these two qualities extends to language itself. In Pali, the word for gratitude, katanyu, literally means to have a sense of what was done. In Samyutta Nikaya 48.10, the Buddha defines mindfulness as remembering and able to call to mind even things that were done and said long ago. Our parents' instructions to us when we were children to remember the kindness of others are among our first lessons in mindfulness. As we develop a sense of gratitude, we practice in strengthening this quality of mind. However, not all the lessons taught by gratitude and empathy are of a heartwarming sort. Instead, they give rise to a sense of samvega, which can be translated as dismay or even terror over how risky and precarious the goodness of the world can be. To begin with, there's the fact that you can't choose beforehand whose kindness you're indebted to. There's no telling what kind of parents you'll get. As the Buddha rightly notes, some parents are stingy, immoral, and foolish. Not only are they abusive to their children, but they also might not be content or even pleased with the type of repayment the Buddha says is best for them. They may demand an unreasonable level of repayment, involving actions that are downright harmful for you, themselves, and others. And yet, this doesn't cancel the debt you owe them for the simple fact that they've enabled you to live. You've probably heard of the passage in which the Buddha says, "A being who has not been your mother at one time in the past is not easy to find. A being who has not been your father, your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter at one time in the past is not easy to find. Why is that? From an inconceivable beginning comes transmigration." When you think about how difficult each of these relationships can be, it's no surprise that the Buddha didn't say this to make you feel warm-hearted to all the beings you meet. He said this to induce samvega. Long have you thus experienced stress, experienced pain, experienced loss, swelling the cemeteries, enough to become disenchanted with all fabricated things, enough to become dispassionate, enough to be released. Samyutta Nikaya 15.14 through 19. Even the debts of gratitude you owe to yourself for the good actions you've done are enough to induce a sense of dis-ease. You know that not all your past intentions have been skillful, and yet these are the things that will shape the conditions of your life now and into the future. You're in a precarious position, enough to make you want to find a way out, even of the network of kindness and gratitude that sustains whatever goodness there is in the world. This desire grows even stronger when you allow your empathy to spread to those who have had to make unwilling sacrifices to keep you alive. Every day, the Buddha advised, you should reflect on the fact that life depends on the requisites of food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. Many are the beings who have had to die and suffer over hardships because of your need for these things. Contrary to the song that concludes Mahler's fourth symphony, lambs don't gleefully jump into the stew pot to feed you. And even if, when you're in the fortunate position to be able to decide what kind of food you eat, you adhere to a vegetarian diet, you still owe an enormous debt to the farmers and workers who have had to slave under harsh conditions to provide the requisites you need. The sense of indebtedness that these reflections induce go far beyond gratitude, and it is certainly not pleasant to think about. This may be why so many people try to deny that they owe anyone a debt of gratitude at all, or why those who do encourage the contemplation of gratitude as a source of happiness tend to reduce it to a generic sense of appreciation and contentment. In the words of one writer, wanting what you have, knowing that you have and are enough, devoid of any sense of debt. Gratitude of this sort tends to focus on things, because gratitude to things is so much easier than gratitude to benefactors. They don't make demands, they don't suffer, and they don't mix their kindness with abuse. Yet there's no getting around the fact that our very lives depend on the kindness and hardships of others, and that we can't get out of the resulting debts by callously denying them or blithely wishing them away. If we don't repay them now, we'll have to repay them, sometimes at high interest, later. For even death doesn't erase our debts or free us from coming back to incur more. So to avoid these entanglements, we need another way out. A way the Buddha found through training his mind to reach a happiness that no longer needs to depend on the kindness and sacrifices of others. And although this happiness provides an escape, it isn't escapist. It settles your debts in a responsible and generous way. This is because unconditional happiness allows you to abandon the cravings and attachments through which you repeatedly take on the identity of a being. To identify yourself as a being means having to find food, both physical and mental, to keep that identity going. This is why, when you're a being, you need to depend on a network of kindness, gratitude, and sacrifice. But when you can abandon the need for that identity, the mind no longer has to feed. It's no longer a burden to anyone. As for the body, as long as you're still alive, those who provide for its needs reap merit many times over for the gifts they provide. This, in fact, is one of the motivations for gaining awakening. We will undertake and practice those qualities that make one a contemplative, so that the services of those whose robes, alms food, lodging, and medicinal requisites we use will bring them great fruit and great reward. Majjhima Nikaya 39. At the same time, the example of your behavior and freedom of mind is a gift to others, in that it shows how they, too, can free themselves from their debts. This is why the Buddha said that only those who have attained full awakening eat the alms food of the country without incurring debt. They've even paid off their debt to the Buddha for having taught the way to release. As he said, the only homage he requested was that people practice the Dhamma in line with the Dhamma, i.e., to develop the disenchantment and dispassion that leads to release. Dika Nikaya 16 and Samyutta Nikaya 22.39 through 42. So that the world will not be empty of awakened people. In this way, attaining full release is not a selfish act. Instead, it is the highest expression of kindness and gratitude. Of course, it's a rare person who will take this route to freedom, but that doesn't lessen its value or relevance. As with gratitude and benefaction, it's an opportunity to become rare and distinctive that's open to anyone with the discernment to appreciate it and the determination to become truly kind and debt-free. So that is the end of this article. So I'll see if there is any questions. Hello Niranjan, hello Manal, hello Bhumika, hello Sood. There is one question from Sood. Is the gaining of the path of stream entry a halfway out of this math at least? Is that why you let go of a lot of suffering after breaking the 3 lower fetters? So, stream entering is a guaranteed way out of this mess. At most, you will have 7 more lifetimes, and that would be somebody that is quite lazy. On 7 lifetimes after an countless number through space and time, that's a pretty good deal. I don't remember off the top of my head which sutta it is, but the Buddha takes some dirt from the ground and has it underneath his fingernail. And he asks the monks, which is greater, monks? The amount of dirt under my fingernail or the amount of dirt in this mountain? And they respond that, of course, there is far more dirt in the mountain than underneath the Buddha's fingernail. And he uses this simile to represent that the amount of dirt under his fingernail is how much suffering is left for one who has at least attained stream entry. So in other words, it is very, very minimal. And for someone that has attained stream entry, they won't have any more lower realms of rebirth. So the lowest you could be reborn as a stream enterer is a human. If in this life you got to be a non-returner, you would be reborn in the Pirabodes and become an Arahant there. So you would be guaranteed at least okay conditions. Depending upon the particular karma that you had in lifetimes before that, there still may be uncomfortable aspects. Being a human definitely has plenty of uncomfortable situations and feelings. But it is a guaranteed way out of this mess. You will be good to go. Maximum 7 more lifetimes till you attain full awakening. And as far as, is that why you let go of a lot of suffering after breaking the 3 lower fetters? Yes, and the 3 lower fetters are also more coarse versions of delusion. So once those have dropped away, it allows you to work on subtler forms of delusion. The LFH asks, how does one increase their chances of being reborn as a human? And a related question, can lay people attain Nibbana? So for the first one, how does one increase their chances of being reborn as a human? And the answer to this is follow the 5 precepts. This is the bare minimum to maintain a human rebirth. So other conditions will play a factor as well. So what you have done previously in this life and in other lives. But by following the 5 precepts, you're creating a lot of good karma. And in doing so, that means you're more likely to have a better rebirth, either in your next life or following lives. I don't remember which sutta this is off the top of my head either. So perhaps after the live stream, I'll find these suttas I've referenced and put them in the comments, or the section with the information. But there is a person who is really, really afraid of what their next birth will be like. And because this person had practiced well, they had done a lot of good deeds, the precepts are good deeds, he told this person that you don't have to fear, your next rebirth will be a good one. So if you want to have a human life or higher, if you want your next rebirth, regardless of stream entry, to have a higher possibility of being a good one, maintain the 5 precepts. So on the topic of can lay people attain Nibbana, this is technically a yes, but it's unlikely. And this is because there is an area where the Buddha says that if somebody hasn't cut off the fetter of lay life, they can't become an arahant. And while this is not part of the 10 fetters, it makes sense because you will have at least the remaining 5 if you still live like a layperson and have lay obligations. So unless that fetter is gone, Nibbana isn't going to happen. And if one is a layperson by technicality, but lives like a monk, and perhaps they have some obligations, like they need to take care of their parents, but they act and they live like a monk, and they do give up the fetter of lay life, but they just happen to be a layperson, then it is possible. But otherwise, you can still become a non-returner, and that's a pretty great deal. Go to the pure abodes. So Manal asks, Aya, how would you say happiness is defined as stated in this sutta? So in this article, though I mentioned a couple suttas, but in general, when I think of happiness, I think of how the Buddha defines Nibbana. So being free from greed, hatred, and delusion. Being unshakable like a mountain, no matter what happens to you. You could be being sawed limb from limb, be in incredible pain, like in the simile of the saw, and be completely mentally unperturbed. That is happiness. Sood asks, Dear Venerable, so the more generous you are you just as entrenched in samsara as someone who is extremely selfish? If so, why is it that the Buddha is noted to have developed paramita of dana to perfection? Or am I understanding this all wrong? And dana is a good thing and should just keep developing merit to the extreme. Yes, dana is a very good thing. The Buddha has said, don't be afraid of good deeds. And by doing good deeds, you're more likely to have good conditions to practice the Dhamma again in this lifetime and in future lifetimes until you do reach awakening. Now, until you become a stream enterer, yes, you are just as entrenched in samsara as somebody who is extremely selfish. In your next life, if someone didn't practice well, they could be that extremely selfish person. In the past, we've all been that extremely selfish person. So unless you become at least a stream enterer, nothing in particular is guaranteed. However, you can think of Nibbana like a mountain. You have to do a lot of work to get to that mountain. And maybe you need to do a lot of work before you can even start to climb the mountain. For example, if someone is climbing Mount Everest, in order to even be approved to do that, you need to do a lot of training, and there is a long trek out to it before you even get there. However, once that progress has been made, you don't lose it. It will help you continue on your path in this life and in future lives because you've planted those seeds. You just need to continue to take care of them. You might go on detours and go sightseeing and get off the main path to get to the top of the mountain, to get to Nibbana. But because you planted those seeds and watered them in this lifetime and in others, you'll come back on track eventually and will be able to continue to practice towards Nibbana. As Ajahn Jeff said in this article, by practicing gratitude, by being kind, this reinforces you to continue to do these good deeds, and then you can also rejoice in them, which is another kind of merit. So don't be afraid of good deeds. Rejoice in them. Do good deeds for other people. Appreciate the good deeds people do for you, even if it's not like something physical. And yeah, be multifaceted in your Dhamma. You don't just have to give, you can also practice in other ways. So don't cut yourself short. So Sood then asks, and hello Gregory, what is the simplest way to just attain stream entry? Do you meditate all the time and boom, you are there? So meditation itself is not sufficient. If you don't have sense restraint and if you don't have strong sila, your meditation isn't going to get very far. So sila, samadhi, panya. When you have strong sila, that'll make your samadhi, your meditation better. And when you have strong samadhi, that opens more opportunities for wisdom to arise. And when you are practicing the various aspects of the Buddhist path throughout your day, not just on the cushion, and if you're only meditating, then you're missing out on other opportunities to practice as well. And you might even be shutting yourself into a box that doesn't allow conditions for you to grow in the way that you need to. As I said, it on its own isn't sufficient. So if you want stream entry, plant the seeds. Practice really, really, really strong sila. Practice sense restraint. And read the suttas. See what little bits of information you pick up that are really relevant to you. Sometimes you'll read something and you're like, this is not relevant to me at all. And then you come onto this gem that you're like, wow, the Buddha is speaking directly to me, exactly my needs with this sutta. Write it down and remember it, and see how you can practice it in your daily life. So the more you're practicing, the more your feet are on the ground, the more you are taking the practice off of your cushion, the more your off the cushion practice will support your meditation, and the more your meditation will support your practice off the cushion. So you can't rush it. There is no easiest way in particular. When the conditions are right, it'll happen. In the meantime, you just need to continue to practice well. You can think of like a tree, for example, like a peach tree or something. If you don't have the right conditions, the tree is going to die, or if it doesn't die, it's not going to fruit. And no matter how much you wish and want the fruit that's on the tree to get ripe, until the conditions are ready, it is not going to be ripe. So be patient, take care of the tree, take care of yourself, and focus on the conditions. So we have 1 minute left, so we'll see if I can answer this last question. Adrian says, "Hello, I quit my job and I'm looking for a shift in my life. Would you have any advice on becoming a monk? I don't know of all places where to go. I'm looking for someone who is a realized being." So you're unlikely to meet a realized being. Most often somebody that's just a little further along the path than you is somebody that'll help you out the most. And you have to have really, really good karma to meet a realized being. I recommend asking this question again for Monk Chat tonight for a longer answer. But in brief, visit monasteries. See if you can do a week-long stay or a month-long or longer. For here, first-time residents are welcome to stay from Wednesday to Sunday or Friday to Sunday. So if you wanted to come here, you could do so and see what monastery life is like. If there's other monasteries near you, see what their guidelines are like, and see if it's something you actually want to do. A lot of people think they want to become monks, but a lot of people don't actually want to once they see what the conditions are like. If you send the monastery an email, I can also send you a more in-depth answer in terms of what entering monastic life could look like, since I've only been a Sāmaṇera for about 8 months myself. And we are now out of time, and we're about to have the meal. So we can respect the suttas and the teaching from Ajahn Jeff with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, 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 anumodami. And if you're free, tonight we have an open monk chat tonight from 7:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. It'll be myself, Ayasobana, and Sikamana Aryavamsa. You can ask any questions related to Buddhism, monasticism, or your practice. Until then, Sukhi Hotu, practice well and be well, and hopefully see you tonight.